Welcome to this Tutor to You Sociology topic video on theory and methods, examining the factors influencing a sociologist's choice of topic and research methods. When selecting a topic to research or a method to use to conduct that research, sociologists are influenced by a series of factors. Some of these relate to their own personal values, such as their theoretical perspective or their area of interest. For example, sociologists influenced by Marxist traditions will ordinarily look at inequalities in society that are based upon a person's social class. Feminists would ordinarily look at inequalities between the genders in an area of society. These may be further influenced by their own area of specialism, for example education, media, beliefs or family life. A research sociologist will often spend years looking at one particular aspect of society and specialise in that area, particularly in contemporary society where researching a topic could take years, rather than in the past where sociologists tended to develop a theoretical approach. Those who took a more theoretical approach would look more generally at society, so the likes of Parsons and Durkheim, who looked at broad aspects of sociology. In contemporary society, it is more specialised. Another factor that influences a researcher's choice of topic are funding agencies. Sociological research is usually funded by one of several sources. Universities, charities and the government all fund sociological research, and so often the research topics are set by these bodies, and sociologists will put forward proposals to conduct research in specific areas that are set out by those bodies. A further influence on a researcher's choice of topic will be their own career trajectory. The stage of a researcher's career influences their ability to choose their own topic, and this is something we are going to examine further on in this video. But we'll start by looking in depth at a sociologist's values and how that might influence their choice of topic. It seems obvious to suggest that Marxists will look at class differences and feminists will look at gender differences, but these inequalities run through numerous fields of sociological inquiry. Furthermore, many researchers draw upon a range of influences in trying to understand the social world, particularly in contemporary society. It is very difficult to state with any certainty that a sociologist is a Marxist or a feminist or a functionalist. Often researchers will draw upon a range of influences when conducting their research. For example, not all researchers who look at social class inequality would describe themselves as Marxist, particularly those influenced by others such as Max Weber. Sociological researchers can also be influenced by the institution they are part of. Often research is conducted by sociologists who will be employed by universities, and these institutions will have areas of specialism that they particularly focus on, and research conducted by these sociologists will focus on broadening the knowledge base in that area of society. Some famous examples of these include the Glasgow University Media Group, who have focused on the impact of the media on society, the Chicago School, the Department of Sociology at Chicago University, who focused on applying ethnographic methods to theoretical approaches, particularly in the study of crime, and were influenced by a broad spectrum of different perspectives on society. The Frankfurt School, where the likes of Adorno and Marcuse were influenced by the Marxist tradition, they focused on addressing the criticisms of Marx by adopting new ideas that form the basis of neo-Marxist ideology. And the Centre for Contemporary Caribbean Studies at Birmingham University, where Stuart Hall examined perceptions of black Caribbean citizens by the police and media in the 1970s. Sociologists at these institutions would ultimately be limited in the topics that they could choose in order to fit in with the profile of the institution. A further consideration in the choice of topic is how the research will be funded. Sociological research is funded through research grants from institutions such as universities, charities, businesses, and each of these will have their own specialist areas that they want sociological research to be conducted into. This has the impact of limiting a sociologist's research to fit in with the criteria for funding. One funding source is universities, and many sociology departments at universities will specialise in a specific topic area and look to expand knowledge in that area. Universities will often publish their areas of research interest on websites, so if you're thinking of going into a career in sociology, it's always worth checking out universities that specialise in areas you might want to study in the future. While most offer general sociology courses, they will specialise in specific approaches to studying society, or have a particular focus on the experiences within different areas of society. A second funding source is the government, And this research is either conducted by research departments within the civil service or by contracting sociologists to conduct research on their behalf. Governments have a tendency to look at large-scale research that has the potential to impact on as many people as possible, and this may limit those wanting to do small-scale research with an underrepresented group in society. Governments are also less likely to offer funding to those who may be critical of their approaches, so research into areas such as the impact of government cuts would be unlikely to get funding. A final funding source for sociologists are charities, and each of these will look to research areas that are of importance to them. For example, the Joseph Rowntree Foundation looks to research inequalities in society and produces research into the effects of poverty. In a similar fashion, Oxfam looks at inequalities on a global scale and funds research projects into the social impacts of poverty on developing countries, as well as research into other areas such as agriculture, healthcare, and the impacts of overpopulation. And for aspiring sociologists in global development, this may be a source of funding for their areas of interest. Like most workers, sociologists have career aspirations and want to be experts in their field and gain recognition. However, this takes time, and often sociologists will have to research areas that are outside of their field of interest in order to help their career progress. Early career sociologists may end up working as research assistants on projects before being able to submit their own research proposals. Once established, what is often referred to as a mid-career academic, they may have the skills, connections and knowledge to apply for funding in a topic area of their choosing. As their career develops to become a senior academic, they would have more freedom to be able to direct the research interests of the department. However, this takes years of working in research, and therefore a good percentage of sociologists' career will be spent researching topics that are not always of their choosing. The topic chosen will also influence the methods that a researcher decides to use. Research that requires large-scale responses are more likely to use quantitative methods such as closed questionnaires and structured interviews in order to be able to collect the required amount of data within an agreed timescale. A second way that the topic influences the method is through the selection of potential participants. The researcher may be examining hard-to-reach groups such as gangs or the victims of domestic violence, and this will influence the methods they choose. Gangs are unlikely to respond to questionnaires, and so observations or unstructured interviews may be of more use. Vulnerable groups, such as victims of domestic violence, are unlikely to want to be observed, and statistics on domestic violence are unreliable, so adopting a more empathetic approach, such as using an unstructured interview, may be more beneficial. A third consideration is whether the research topic can easily be measured. Some attitudes like voting intentions or public attitudes to social issues might be easily recorded through opinion polls or closed questionnaires. Other issues, such as the impact of media representations of different body images on young girls, may require a more qualitative method, such as open questionnaires or personal documents or diaries to research. On a specification, we've come across many sensitive topics, and these are usually researched through using qualitative methods so as to gain an insight into the impact of this on the life of the individual. Aside from the topic, other factors which might influence the methods chosen by the researcher are the preferences of the funding body, who have a lot of influence in research funding. A second factor is a sociologist's theoretical perspective. Feminists will use different methods to functionalists, for example. And a third is methodological preferences. Which research methods does the researcher feel best suited to using? And how do they want to view society? From the top down, or by examining those that are experiencing the issue firsthand? Funding bodies will not only have a say in the topic area, but will often stipulate the type of data they would like to see, therefore influencing the method. Governments like to see quantitative data as this allows them to plan social policies and address issues, or in the case of social trends, allocate funding to the social institutions that deal with those issues. Furthermore, as governments rely upon the consent of the electorate to govern, they will look to deal with large-scale issues first, in order to win public backing. Universities, as previously mentioned, have specialisms in certain topic areas, but they may also have preferred methodologies they use to obtain data. The Chicago School utilised ethnographic approaches to study a society, while some universities in the UK have received additional funding to conduct research using quantitative data, or what's called a Q-STEP programme, which will influence research carried out at their institutions. Charities may also stipulate methodologies that need to be used in research carried out on their behalf. This would usually be dependent upon the aims of the research. So, for example, Shelter, the charity for homelessness, might want to conduct a census of people sleeping on the streets at different times of the year, which would require quantitative data. Help the Aged may want a qualitative approach when looking at the impacts of loneliness and isolation of older people in society. Different theoretical approaches will have preferred methodologies. Functionalists, as we have discovered throughout our studies, look to use positivist methodologies in their research, partly because of their desire for sociology to be scientific, and partly because they are focused on gaining a broad overview of society by examining quantitative data. Feminists have developed feminist methodologies as a reaction to what they saw as the cold and detached research of patriarchal sciences. Feminist interviewing, brought about by Anne Oakley, looks to demonstrate empathy in research and offer practical support to participants. Ethnographic approaches are favoured by more and more sociologists, particularly in contemporary society, with greater diversity and complexity, but these are closely linked to interactionist approaches, as they desire to gain an understanding of the lived experience of individuals, particularly those the most disadvantaged in society. Let's look at some evaluations of these. The choice of topic and methods for sociologists is very often restricted, and Goldner suggested that most research is a product of the desires of those funding the research, which in many ways limits the freedom of sociologists to investigate certain issues in society. However, Weber would disagree. He suggested that the values of a researcher will always influence their choice of topic and methods, but that once research has begun, researchers should become detached and objective, applying scientific principles to the act of conducting research, if not the selection of topic and method. While both these judgments on the selection of topics and method are valid, both Goldner and Weber suggest that conducting the research is more important than the selection of topic and method, with Goldner suggesting that the values influencing the research should be stated at the outset as a form of committed sociology, while Weber suggested that researchers should be held to the highest moral and ethical standards in the conduct of research and should act in the interests of science by reporting accurate findings, especially if those contradicted their own theoretical position. That concludes this Tutor to You Sociology topic video on theory and methods, looking at the factors influencing a sociologist's choice of topic and methods. Thanks for watching.